Hello and welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we're here with episode 83, and we've got a good one planned for today. We're going to talk about some news, but mainly we're going to talk about this huge Misfits event that happened this weekend, which was just crazy. You had a ton of awesome fights, and I really like how Misfits is going in this new direction where you get a little bit of a taste of everything. You get your top fights with your former UFC guys like Darren Till, Tony Ferguson competing and getting wins, which was crazy. And then you'll have your MMA fights. Dillon Danis getting a 15-second submission was crazy. You've got your legitimate 10-round world-ranked boxing match between Ty Mitchell and Sean Hemphill. You've got your just fun influencer fights with Joey Essex and Numero going to war in a ridiculous fight. And then you've got like your legitimate prospects like Amir Anderson and Jahan Ingram. So you've got everything across the board on this card, literally anything you could ask for as a combat sports fan, and it just makes for a really entertaining night of fights. So let's hop right into it. Darren Till beating Luke Rockhold in brutal fashion with a huge knockout. Tony Ferguson coming over a tough first two rounds and then stopping Salt Papi very controversially, very early in my opinion, but getting a win, his first win in 6 years after an 8-fight losing streak in the UFC, just really happy to see that for him. Just hate the way that it happened in the fight. But we'll talk about that. Let's jump back to the main event. Darren Till knocking out Luke Rockhold. This guy Darren Till has really found his footing in boxing. Was in UFC, was a good fighter. He went 6-5, not the best record. And then he comes into boxing and has just been doing really well against good opposition. And I think this may have been his most impressive fight yet. Obviously, Luke Rockhold, a little bit of a wild card. Didn't know what he was going to be like. Never had a professional boxing match. Hasn't fought in a while. But he looked in good shape. He looked big. The buildup had been excellent. He had gotten into Darren Till's head. There's no doubt about that. So there was some things like, okay, obviously Darren Till's the big favorite here, but who knows what Rockhold's going to bring. And pretty much just from the first minute of the fight, you saw that Rockhold looked okay, but just every time he took a shot, just didn't react well at all. And you could tell, okay, yeah, Till's going to take this. Like, Till is just far more better boxer and is hitting harder and having more impact. And that's pretty much what happened. He lands a huge knockout at the end of the first knockdown, the end of the first round, which again, the first round it was competitive. Then he lands a huge knockdown in which he gets a long count, terrible refereeing. We're going to talk about that in multiple instances. But Rockhold gets dropped big time. He's very hurt. More of the same. Till just kind of really getting close to hurting him. And then the third round lands a brutal knockout. I mean, the way that he had him folded like a pretzel was great. It's honestly probably one of the top 10, 15 knockouts this year. It was really great. KSI yelling over the comms, why is he still counting? I don't know why the ref was still counting. His team immediately ran in to help him because he looked in really bad shape, and it's like, dude, just call it a knockout. You don't need to give him the count. This commission that the Misfits has was horrible on Saturday night. So many instances, and we're going to that's going to be a recurring theme throughout today's episode, talking about all the instances of just this really, really bad refereeing. But anyways, yeah, I thought that it was a very impressive performance from Till. Like I said, probably his most impressive yet. You look at the Anthony Taylor fight. Sure, AT didn't really have any resistance against him, I guess you could say, but he still went 6 rounds. Darren Stewart actually gave him a decent fight. Luke Rockhold gave a good minute and a half and then just got destroyed and dominated. So the question is, what's next for Darren Till? He's kind of the new face of Misfits with KSI being out for so long. He's headlined their last 3 events. And, dude, I think this guy really can be a big star for them. Honestly, this is the first time I feel like I've watched a fighter in a while and been like, this is who I want to see Jake Paul, and they may be able to beat him. I haven't thought that way since the KSI Tommy Fury days, where Tommy Fury, we're like, yeah, we want him to fight Jake Paul, and then he did beat him. And then KSI as well. I never thought KSI could beat Jake Paul, but that was a fight that we wanted to make. It was going to be competitive. Every other fight that Jake's had, even when fans have been asking for it, like, oh, have him fight Mike Perry. Nobody really thought Mike Perry was going to beat Jake Paul. Nobody thought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was going to beat Jake Paul. Realistically, but I think that Darren Till is really capable of doing that. And he's a guy who, sure, he's an MMA fighter, but he's by far the most successful MMA fighter to become a boxer. And he's been really, really good in there. He's the same weight as Jake. He's 3-0. He's knocking out guys in the same way that Jake started off his career. He would be a really tough fight for Jake, and that's a really competitive one. Like, dude, make that fight happen. DAZN pay-per-view next year. After Jake fights Tank, whatever happens there, if he fights AJ, whatever, this is a fight I would love to see. This makes more sense to me right now than Jake Paul versus KSI, if you want to do the MVP versus Misfits thing. And, dude, I really like that fight. Obviously, Darren Till also had some words for Carl Froch. I don't even really want to entertain that because I just know Carl Froch won't do it. He hasn't boxed in 10 years, and sure, he's a great boxer. He's also a lot smaller than Till and a lot older. So I don't know. I think that there's a good chance he could beat him, but I just know it's not going to happen, so I'm not really going to think about it, you know? But I did like Till going straight for the call out there, and it especially shows how Crotch left the arena as soon as Till said, "Oh, let's get in the ring and face off." He left. But I mean, yeah, Misfits, they've got some options for him. They were able to get somebody like Luke Rockhold in there. So there's a lot of fights you can come up with for him against other UFC fighters and such. But that Jake Paul fight really is something that I'm very keen on seeing, and I would love to. Let's jump over to the co-main event, Tony Ferguson, Salt Papi. Now, this fight, I'm going to be honest, I'd kind of written off Tony. I didn't really think he was going to be able to win it. I thought that Salt Papi is one of the best YouTube boxers. I still think he's a little bit overrated just because we've seen him lose now 3 times, and we've seen him get stopped twice. Like, he's his best wins, Hold King Kenny, have come over okay opposition, but whenever he stepped up, really, he's just every time there's been something he does wrong and he loses. So even though I think he's really impressive, he has some of the best power, some of the best counter punching ability, some of the best speed, some of the best movement in YouTube boxing, there's just always something about him that I feel like holds him back from winning these big fights. And this time, it was a little bit his chin, a little bit his resistance to the shots, and how he was reacting. It was more so the refereeing. I think that Salt Papi was winning the first 2 rounds. I thought he was looking pretty good. Obviously, he wasn't really hurting Tony. He was getting a lot of good shots on him, but Tony's just a tough guy, and it's going to be hard to send him down. But then you get into the 3rd round, and Salt does have some gas tank issues. And Tony Ferguson is a guy who kind of wears you down, and he gets going later in the fight. And so I think we were starting to see that trend start where Tony was on his way to winning the 3rd round, and then he, gets Salt on the ropes, lands a few really hurting shots, right? Like, you could tell that they kind of shook Salt's head and had him not looking great, but he was still defending. He was trying to move around the punches. He was not at all worthy of getting stopped. And that's why it really sucks, because Tony Ferguson needed this win so bad. And I was so happy to see it and to see the emotion and just the relief in his face. Like, it was awesome, but I felt so terrible for Salt Papi because he got robbed there. He did. That was a horrendous stoppage. It's one of the worst stoppages I've seen this year. And it especially sucks because it isn't like Tony Ferguson was this young, up-and-coming prospect, fighting a whoever guy, like a 2-35 Englishman who hadn't won a round. And, like, if it was a bad stoppage like that, we'd be like, yeah, bad stoppage, whatever. But this was different. This was a high-stakes fight where Salt Papi was winning. He was 1,000% ahead on the cards and just got taken out of the fight like that. It was really bad. I feel like a lot of the refereeing was very amateur in feeling like they needed to stop these fights early, or with the standing 8 counts, which were just really, really bad. But you know what? At the end of the day, Salt Papi's a very humble guy, and he said, like, yeah, I lost. It's whatever. I think I got stopped way too early, but it's whatever, man. I would not be mad if they ran it back. I doubt that's going to happen just because it doesn't feel like that's on the table. But I think a rematch makes a lot of sense. I think that they're talking about doing a Salt Papi versus Slim rematch. To be honest, I don't really see a whole lot of point in that. Granted, Salt Papi was also on his way to winning that one, but then he got rightfully stopped there. He got knocked out. Or at least knocked down really hard. So I'm okay if they do that rematch. I kind of prefer, I think it makes more sense for Salt Papi to rematch Tony Ferguson than Slim. As for Tony Ferguson, you have that fight. He's the interim champion. Gibb is the full champion. Tony said he doesn't know who Gibb is. That is a fight that I think could be good. And Gibb kind of posted on Twitter alluding that he wants that fight. It makes sense. I would be totally down to see that, but I also think Tony Ferguson may have his eyes on bigger fights if they can get that for him. And then the other option is Tony Ferguson, Dillon Danis in MMA. I think that's a great fight. Obviously, Dillon Danis and him were supposed to fight earlier this year on GFL before that all fell apart. And then they both ended up on this card, and Dillon Danis actually respectful to him afterwards, said, "Hey man, like I'd love to do it." And I think that fight honestly makes a lot of sense for MMA. Granted, this was Tony Ferguson's first win in a while, and it was in boxing. So part of me is like, maybe his MMA days are over. Maybe it's time to switch over to boxing and stay in this influencer scene for a bit. If he decides to go fight Dillon Danis in MMA, that's still competitive, but I kind of would. A part of me wants to see him stay in boxing. However, they make the Dillon Danis fight. I'm like, yeah, dude, like that makes a lot of sense. For the same weight, they're the two best MMA fighters on Misfits. Let's do it. And let's just talk about Dillon Danis. Obviously, the fight with Warren Spencer, this was always going to be kind of one-sided. Nobody really had picked Warren Spencer at all to win this. We knew Dillon Danis is a very high-level grappler. He hasn't fought in MMA in over 6 years. Same time, last time he fought, Tony Ferguson was still probably having like his first loss of his losing streak, which is crazy. And as for Warren Spencer, he's okay. He's been a Misfits boxer, and he's good as a Misfits boxer, but he has no really experience outside of that. Maybe some kickboxing, no experience wrestling. And at the start of the fight, lands a shot or two, and actually kind of rocks Danis. Doesn't rock him hard, but Dillon Danis' head go back, and I'm like, okay, good, like dude, strike with him. And then he tries to grab Dillon, and you just hear Wade on commentary go, oh man, like don't grapple the grappler. Dillon Danis takes him down and submits him within 15 seconds. Really, really impressive wrestling work from Danis. And he's kind of reminded everyone that he is still a really good wrestler. However, this was a huge mismatch. Like, phenomenally, terribly, atrociously bad mismatch when you look at how quickly that went. It's like, okay, great. Because I was excited. I was like, dude, we're going to see MMA in a boxing ring on Misfits. Like, I'm so excited to see how this looks. And it just ended so fast where it's like, okay, that was a little bit pointless. So hopefully next time they can get Dillon Danis a really good MMA fight, and I think that could be against Tony Ferguson. So we'll see that. He also called out him and Eddie Hall were in the ring talking, and Eddie Hall said like, hey, if I get down to 300, that was the agreement they said, and Eddie Hall says he has 64 pounds to lose. He gets down to 300 pounds in the next 12 weeks, they can fight. I don't know if that's going to be able to get sanctioned in any way. If they can, sure, it'd be hilarious to watch, be a great watch, and because Dillon Danis is a good wrestler, but Eddie Hall is literally twice the size of him. So that is such a Misfits fight to make, and I would love to watch that. So Dillon Danis a little bit of redeeming this weekend, I would say. Joey Essex and Numero, what a fight. These guys, no skill, no technique, just pure heart. I don't know how neither of them went down. They're both giving it their all, throwing these huge shots the whole fight. It was definitely the most entertaining fight of the whole card. It was really, really good action and a great debut from both guys on Misfits. Obviously, Joey Essex gets the nod. I thought he was a bit lucky there. I think that it was a draw, personally. I could also probably see Numero taking it just because I think that it did have some some more dominant rounds in there. The rounds the Essex won, I think you also were a little bit closer. But yeah, this was a really fun fight. I hope that they keep both guys around on Misfits. I would love to see them rematch even. I know Joey Essex has been linked to fighting Deji in the past, and that's still a fight they can make. But I was really, really impressed by that was just the most Misfits fight ever, and it was a lot of fun. Then you had a 10-round pro boxing match, Ty Mitchell and Sean Hemphill. Ty Mitchell actually beat him, which I was very blown away by. Now, I know that some people thought that Hemphill won the fight. I think it was close. I personally had it 6-4 Mitchell. I think 5-5 is a very popular scorecard that's out there. But, one of the judges had this 98-95 for Ty Mitchell, which I just think is a really, really bad card, especially because it doesn't make any sense. That means you gave out 3 10-10 rounds. Like, come on, dude. Did you even try to score it? Let's be honest, it wasn't the best fight. It was a little bit boring at times. The second half of the fight got a little bit more interesting when Ty Mitchell gassed heavily, and that kind of showed what he needs to work on. He's got a really poor conditioning, and if he's going to keep on moving up in the ranks, he's going to have to have a better gas tank. But I thought Sean Hemphill had a really slow start, and that kind of cost him this fight because later on he was starting to dominate the later rounds. He just needed to start earlier, and it wasn't until the fourth. I think the first round he gave him, I think, was the fifth. Before that, he really hadn't. He was barely throwing, and Ty Mitchell was just kind of able to take up those rounds. And I'm really impressed that Ty Mitchell is actually as good as they were saying he is. I didn't think that he would be able to win this fight, and kudos to him. he just beat the guy who beat Mark Jeffers, who was linked to a fight with Callum Simpson potentially. So that really shows the level that Mitchell's at. I don't know if they want to keep him at 168 or 175. Afterwards, Callie Sauerland said that they'd like to link him up with like a British fight next, somebody like Lyndon Arthur or Liam Cameron. I really like the Liam Cameron fight. I think that could be a lot of fun. And same with the Lyndon Arthur. Those are both fights where, again, I think Ty Mitchell may be the underdog just because he hasn't done a whole lot in the pro game. His record is 5-2. But dude, if they can get those fights for him, especially on Misfits, that would be huge. That really would be. He's definitely like if he's gonna get a ranking pretty soon probably with the WBA and the IBF, which is wild that Misfits is gonna have an actual world ranked fighter and hey, good for him. Chase Demore, Nathan Marcon. Yeah, this was a little bit disappointing, wasn't it? Because this fight had a lot of really funny and interesting build up. Obviously, nobody thought Marcon was going to win the fight. I actually did give him the first round just because barely anything happened, and I thought that he had a decent game plan. But then in the second round, Demore is starting to beat him a little bit more, gets an uppercut in, and Marcon's lip busts really bad. And at first he was like, "Oh man, like they're stopping it. Like, come on, like these referees are terrible, whatever." By the way, didn't mention the Joey Essex fight. They both had 10-8 counts in that. Like, come on, the 10-8 counts or the standing 8 was just terrible. It was so bad. They didn't have that in this fight. They had it in another one. They had it in the which fight was it? Oh yeah, the Demi Sims fight. There was a standing 8 count in that one as well, which was stupid. And it was also because they weren't even. It wasn't even like justified. Like I remember it was Joey Essex hit Numero with a big shot, right? And then the ref immediately jumped in to pause the action and let Numero recover. And it's like, dude, he wasn't even like he could have been potentially stopped if you let the fight happen. And it was like they were trying to stop anything from getting exciting, and it's just really bad referee. Anyways, I was okay with the stoppage. Afterwards, they show the lip, and his lip was completely sliced open. It looked really bad. So I think that was a very good call to stop that fight. It's just unfortunate. But anyways, as soon as it's called, Marcon runs after Chase and punches him and is trying to fight him still, which we've seen that once or twice before. And the refs and everybody pulls him off, and Chase Demore is dancing, doing like the L dance, twerking at him, and it's just very funny Chase Demore stuff. But it was an unfortunate end, but we all kind of knew what was going to happen. I don't need to see a rematch, really. Chase did call out Johnny Fisher, which I think is hilarious. That's like a Jake Paul calling it Anthony Joshua, honestly. Because, yeah, Johnny Fisher's not world champion level, sure. But he's also not Misfits level, and he would totally beat this guy. So that would be hilarious to see made, but I doubt it happens. And then you'd opening up the main card, Raheem Pardesi upsetting Amadeus Ferrari. Ferrari, big Polish MMA star, fought Salt Papi last year and gassed out, and that's kind of his thing. He's wild. He's so fun. He's so chaotic, but he has no gas tank whatsoever. And coming into this fight, it showed that was on his mind. He was really, really tentative in there and not wanting to do anything to tire himself too much. So he did a good job at that. However, he still gassed out, even though he was barely throwing. Later in the fight, he starts to go a little bit more. He's like, okay, I need to start trying to win around here. And he just gasses out so terribly where Pardesi is starting to get to him. He just kind of takes a knee in the corner and gives up. And it's like, dude, like you fight multiple times a year. Like, what are you doing? Obviously, he showed he was like partying earlier this week. It's like, man, like you're a big star in Poland. You're a decent enough fighter. Like, why are you missing such a crucial hole to being a fighter where you can't make it past 5 minutes without getting tired? It's really bad to see. And it cost him this fight another. Probably the biggest upset of the card. So that was wild. You had Amir Anderson looking sensational over Vitor Siqueira. A little bit of a step up in opponent for him. This is his first 8-rounder. Gets a really great knockout in the 5th round. And I don't want to jump too far, but this guy is... I can very much see him with a world title around his waist sometime in the future. I know it's early. It's only his 4th fight, but he's looking really good so far. And again, it's just crazy that Misfits has signed this guy. They're moving him well. I'd like to see him get another fight or two in before the end of the year. If they can keep him active, keep him getting good fights, he is a really, really talented fighter, and he's got a bright future in world boxing. Carla Jade fought Darren Harris in a pretty dominant performance, I thought, from the champ, and kind of surprised that Carla Jade has been able to hold on to this title for so long. She's improved a lot as a fighter and is one of the only fighters on Misfits who I think can actually box off the back foot well and knows how to do it. So good for her, but I don't know where the other Misfits champs are, like Elle Brooke and Julie Polka, because they're far better and more entertaining. But they really don't have anybody for Carla Jade to fight. So I don't know what they're going to do with her really. As for Demi Sims, daughter of Tony Sims comes in. She gets a really good win over Nadeshi Hopkins. I thought she looked decent. Again, she can be really fun on Misfits. Hopkins was just coming forward, coming through everything, wanting to fight. So she can also stick around and have some fun fights to be in. But Demi Sims, I really enjoyed watching her fight, and I hope that she fights again. She showed some, she's never going to be a pro fighter. No, not that good, but she can fit in very well in Misfits. And like I said, just with Carla Jade, they have nobody for her to fight. I think the last time that the Misfits had a women's fight on Misfits, it was Carla Jade fighting Melanie Shaw, and that was 7 months ago. So they don't put on enough female fights to grow and foster those divisions. So you don't have any challengers. You need to bring in people from outside, like Darren Harris. But when you have somebody like Demi Sims fight, you have that challenger being developed, and then you can have them fight for the title. So it makes more sense like that. And yeah, so good to see that there's a new face around. And then, firstly, Jahan Ingram opened up the card with a second round TKO over Banti Singh. Again, I thought that Singh was another decent guy to have on these shows, and he came forward and he brought the fight. But Jahan Ingram is a really, really solid prospect. I don't think his ceiling's as high as somebody like Amir Anderson, but he's been really good as a pro so far, and he's 8-0 with 6 KOs, I want to say. So another solid win for him, the former Mayweather protege. So that's the whole Misfits card. It was a great, great show. I'm excited for the next one. We don't know when it is, where it is. I hope they come back to the States soon. But yeah, I'm really excited for Misfits 23 whenever and whoever fights on that. I hope that they can get it done for relatively soon and have it in October, maybe November. But I'd like to see them get at least 2 more events in this year, because it's just been they've had great events this year, but just not very many. You also did have BKFC's first event in Montenegro this weekend in Budva. It looks like it was a really cool venue, like up on the mountains even. However, it got rained out, and at first I was worried the whole event got canceled. They did not stream it live. They were not able to. I think the fights got a little bit delayed, and then I think the main and co-main event I heard were completely canceled because a huge storm erupted. The fight is now available to watch on the BKFC app. I don't think it's streaming anywhere else, and I don't pay for their app. I usually just watch the fights on other platforms. So I have not watched it yet. I don't know if I plan on it because it didn't look like it was that stacked of a card, and they lost the big fights anyways. So that's a shame, and it's just really weird that they were able to still have the footage for the fights and record it and have the commentary and have the editing and upload it the next day, but just weren't able to broadcast it live. But yeah, just a really odd event there and turn of events for that card. But now let's hop into some other news because we got a little bit of stuff to talk about. And yeah, let's start with the big thing. Word on the street, Joseph Parker, Fabio Wardley. We talked a little bit about it last episode. It's apparently now close to being finalized. It's from the Ring magazine and Sky Sports as well. So that's what they're saying, is that this fight is looking like it's going to happen. October 25th, O2 Arena. Likely both the WBO interim and WBA regular heavyweight titles on the line. Or sorry, WBA interim. They're both interim champions. Kubrat Pulev is the regular champion, but Wardley's the interim. So battle of the mandatories here, and I think it's a really solid heavyweight fight. I think it could go similar to the Hooney fight, in just that I think that Joseph Parker's going to beat him. Obviously, Wardley did beat Hooney because he knocked him out late, and he has that potential. Fabio Wardley's a guy who has never been, somebody who's like, oh, wow, he's such a high-level boxer, but he does have this really, really strong power. Joseph Parker, yeah, sure, he's got power, but he's a really good boxer. And kind of similar to Justice Hooney, Hooney was dominating him in that fight. He had won every round. And then Wardley found his equalizer, which is his powerful shot, his powerful hand. And that power turned the tide in that fight. And, Parker is a little bit older than him. And it's possible that the same could happen here. I think it's a lot harder to stop to stop Parker than it is to stop Hooney. Look at guys like AJ were not able to stop Joseph Parker, where if you look over to the only guy who has actually is Joe Joyce, but you look at Justice Hooney, the only guy to stop him was Fabio Wardley, and he's also, not been able to be stopped, or was nearly able to be stopped by Kevin Lerena, if you remember back to their fight in 2024. So I don't know. I think that this is a good step up for Fabio Wardley, and I like that he is a top 10 heavyweight, and he's going to fight other top 10 heavyweights, and he's not ducking. Neither of these guys are ducks at all. They know they're waiting on their shot at the king, and they know that they can't all get it, so they're going to fight each other, and I love that. Granted, with that being said, I think Parker beats him. Again, I think this fight is like a 70-30. Like, I think Wardley's got a good chance. And I really would like for it to get made. And I'm happy Parker's not just going to sit on his hands and wait for Usyk to take the fight with him. He's like, all right, fine, I'm going to stay busy. Because he is the number 2 heavyweight right now. And, yeah, dude, just give me Parker Wardley. Let's do it. I love the fight. And it could be a war. Speaking of heavyweights, Anthony Joshua is apparently set for a return in around a January time. And I don't even know if I want to talk about this that much because it's just kind of false hope. We were hearing after AJ got knocked out by Daniel Dubois that he was going to come back in February. He was going to fight in the last Crescendo card. Now we're hearing his comeback is going to be almost a year after that. We're hearing it could be January, it could be February, it could be March. He's just been out of the ring for a really long time, and it's been weird because he was never meant to be a long time. They never said, yeah, he's going to be out of the ring for a long time. He's going to come back relatively soon was what they were saying. People were saying, all right, let's slow down a little bit. And it feels like every Eddie Hearn interview for the last year has just been, any news on AJ? No, I mean, yeah, we're and he's like, and every time he says he hasn't even discussed an opponent with AJ still. And it's like, geez, I mean, I know AJ had some injuries and he's had some surgeries, but dude, it's like, if we're going to fight, like, you got to go, man. Like, you're at the end of your career. You're like 35, 36. There's not a lot of time to just be waiting. And so, anyways, they're saying that the plan is to fight one more time in a fight that against a good heavyweight, but somebody they think he'll beat, and then go into a huge fight later in 2026. Obviously, I think that what's going to happen is Tony Yoka in Ghana, and I'd be okay with that. I like him fighting in Africa. I'd like him to fight somebody better than Yoka, but it's whatever. Then, if they can somehow make it happen, him and Tyson Fury later that year would be spectacular. But I don't know if we get it, dude. I don't know. But I would. Oh man, we need that fight so bad, and it'd be such a shame if it never happens. So hopefully the boxing gods can make it happen, but who knows? There is speculation. I say speculation heavily because I only saw one Twitter post about this, but I thought it was interesting. That Amanda Serrano could be rematching Erica Cruz. They had a really good fight a couple years ago in Puerto Rico on December 27th, and this would be the final fight of Serrano's career. Now, I do think that we are in the final stage of Amanda Serrano's career. I don't think that she's going to have only one more fight, and if she does, I think it's going to be a big fight. I think it's going to be Alicia Baumgardner level. That's a fight I would love to see at 130. I don't think that there's really a lot of point in her rematching Erica Cruz. I wouldn't be mad if that's her bounce back after the Katie Taylor defeats, but because that fight was so entertaining and such a war 2 years ago. But and it'd be really cool to see a fight that late in the year, and to see her finally get to fight in Puerto Rico. She was meant to last year, and then she had that weird thing where she had like the chemicals from her hair get into her eye, and then right before she was supposed to fight, they announced that she wasn't going to be making the walk. And that was just a really weird situation. But yeah, man, I mean, I would love to see her fight in her hometown, and I'd be okay with her rematching Erica Cruz. I just don't feel like this makes a lot of sense for it to be her last fight just now against Cruz. There's not a lot of meaning to that fight, and I think it would just come out of nowhere unless of course she said like, look, I'm just kind of done doing this. After she couldn't beat Katie Taylor, she's like, there's not really much else I want to do, and if there's nothing else you want to do, why stick around and take more brain damage? I get it, but who knows? I love her to go out with the bigger fight though, but I do like the idea of her final fight being in Puerto Rico. We're hearing some potential fights to go on the Eubank-Benn 2 undercard, most notably Jack Catterall, Echo Esserman. That one is looking like it's pretty much done, or at least they're talking like it is. Jack Catterall saying fight news coming soon, and seeming that he's got something done. He posted a Photoshop picture of him and Rick Reno. They've had a great back and forth over the last few months. But that looks like a fight that is likely to happen, and I think it makes a lot of sense for where they're both at. They're both looking to get back into world level, and Esserman getting into world level for the first time after a great win over Josh Taylor. Jack Catterall lost and Arnold Barboza. Weird win over Harlem Eubank, and now we're looking to get into the swing of things with a big fight against Esserman on a huge stage. And this also forced Catterall to get into a big fight, kind of similar to Shakur fighting William Zepeda. Kind of forced him to, really get into a real war and not, just have this jab fest. So I like that. And we're going to see how deep Jack Kettle is willing to go in his bag to fight somebody like Echo Esserman, who's called the Engine because he just doesn't stop and he's all action. But I love that fight a lot, and I hope that does come to fruition and that's on the card. I'd love to see someone like Moses Talman in the co-main, but I don't know if that happens. Cameron Vong versus Gavin Gwynn 2 is also looking likely for that. Vong obviously fights this weekend against TBA. He needs to get a fight announced, but it's looking like this is going to be a run out for him before he gets into another big fight. And I do think the Gavin Gwynn rematch is very likely to happen on that card, even though I prefer that to just be on a matchroom card. I don't think that belongs on such a big event, but who knows? Cameron Vong does have a really big ceiling in the UK, so it will be good to highlight him. Obviously, we also heard Hamza Shiraz versus Callum Simpson is possible for this card. That'd be great on there. And then lastly, Kona Walker looks like he's going to be on this potentially against Blair Cobbs, which is a really good fight, and be stepping Kona Walker up a level to not just British fights and looking more into breaking into world level. Obviously that's not a world title level fight, not as high as Katerl Esserman would be, but an international fight where you can start to get into more looking at the rankings rather than the British and European titles. They're also saying that Pat McCormack, should he win on Saturday, then that's a fight you can make as well. By the way, that fight is now a WBA title eliminator at welterweight, which for me, I'm like, whatever. You've already got Rolly Romero as the champion. Shakram Giasov has been mandatory for like 3 years. Imantas Stanionis is number 2. So I don't know where this is eliminating him and Miguel Parra to go, but I don't know. I guess it's going to be like the number 2, maybe number 3 spot. And it's just, I don't know. They just make everything an eliminator, but whatever. Anyways, I love the fight with him and Kona Walker. If he wins, I say you do that. That could be a lot of fun. I'd be fine with Walker versus Cobbs or Walker versus McCormack. I feel like Walker McCormack's a great British fight and will go well on this card. But also, that could be a good British main event headliner for Eddie Hearn's matchroom card. Doesn't need to be on Real season, like I said, with the other fights. So the purse bids for Subriel Matias versus Dalton Smith are looking to be set for September 2nd, so that's just tomorrow. Again, this fight was something that we thought was maybe finalized for November 22nd. It was on BoxRec. It's apparently not a done deal, and they haven't even really gotten a deal done yet, like we're in place. But purse bids are tomorrow, so hopefully they can get that fight done and made for November 22nd. If not, if it's on another bill, that's fine. But I would love to see it added to that hugely stacked Night of Champions card. We're hearing that Bakram Murtazaliev, Josh Kelly is actually looking more likely to happen, and that it's headed to the UK, but they're searching for a broadcaster. And now this is very interesting to me. Obviously, if it's going to the UK, you'd think it's going to be a Wasserman show, and that Wasserman somehow has the fight instead of PBC. But I guess PBC wasn't really interested. I don't know if Murtazaliev is actually signed with them or not, but anyways, Wasserman getting the fight to be done in the UK. Looking for a broadcaster. Wasserman does have a broadcaster in Channel 5. However, if you look at the shows that they have on there, none of them are very big. They seem like the budget's not huge. This Mick Conlon show on Friday is actually pretty good for a Channel 5 event. They got guys like Charlie Edwards on there. It's in the Dublin Arena, so it's going to be like a pretty big event, I feel, for a Wasserman card. But as for this is a world title fight. And I think that the budget may just be a little bit too big for Channel 5, and that's where they're looking for somebody else to be able to put it on, and kind of help sponsor the event. Obviously, I'm sure DAZN would love to pick it up. They've done some Josh Kelly fights in the past, and I think that this could fare really well on there if they can get that done. But who knows? I would love to see it happen. I'd be fine with it in the UK. I'd probably sell more tickets that way. I just want to see Bakram fight again, and we know it's going to go. Josh Kelly's going to look good for a few rounds, and then Bakram's going to figure him out, and he's going to decapitate him like he does to everyone else. We're hearing that Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov is apparently set for November 22nd in Qatar or Qatar on UFC's debut card there. I like this fight. I think it's a lot of fun. Jan hasn't fought in a while, So he fought in March against Carlos Ulberg. Obviously, he didn't get the nod in that one. I think like Guskov, he's been a little bit of a rising guy here in the 205 division, and so I think this is a really fun fight. Obviously, I think it goes well on that card. I don't like the idea of it headlining, so I hope that it's not, because I think that for a Middle Eastern card, they usually stack them a lot and have a bigger main event, and this would be fine on the main card. I'd love the fight, but yeah, I don't like the idea of this being a main event And it's a big step up for Guskov and a litmus test for him, and a way for Blachowicz to get back into that kind of getting back into that title scene, or contention, top contender. So I like the fight. I just hope it's not the headliner. Speaking of UFC, Raul Rosas Jr. is apparently out versus Rob Font, which is very, very disappointing because that was a big step up for him. I think he was going to be like co-main on that card, or at least high up on it, and he doesn't get that fight anymore, which sucks for him. He got injured. Rob Font is now going to be facing David Martinez on September 13th at Noche UFC. So that's an okay replacement. Still should be a fun fight. I just really wanted to see Rosas get that fight. And lastly, just a fun fight announced for September 12th at BKFC 80. Kimbo Slice Jr. is finally back. I think this is his first bare knuckle fight, taking on Derek Perez, who just had a good fight recently. I feel like I remember him being in a fun fight. And yeah, so he's going to be they're going to be facing each other on quite a big BKFC card coming up. It feels like it's been a minute since they've had a really big BKFC card, so I'm excited for it. And next weekend should be good. You got Yoel Romero making his debut on that bill, and the rematch between Perdomo and Adams as well. So that should be a fun card. That is it. That's everything I've got for today. Going to be doing episode 84 probably on Thursday, where we'll preview the whole weekend. A lot of really good boxing this weekend. Obviously, you got the UFC Paris card with Imavov versus Kaio. That's a great fight. Rufi versus BSD in the co-main event. Then you've also got on that bill, or this weekend, Iglesias Shishkin on Thursday. Like I said, Conlon coming back against Jack Bateson. Jordan White, Rene Tejas-Giron. Very interesting fight. Pat McCormack, Miguel Parra on Saturday. Good fight there. Co-main event, Mark Dickinson, Troy Williamson. Great fight. Eduardo Nunes making his homecoming and first defense of the IBF super featherweight world title against Christopher Diaz. Don't like that fight. Just think it's a bad defense and a very easy fight for him, but whatever. Co-main event on that is Pedro Guevara, Adrian Curiel. Great fight. What else? You've got Oscar Valdez back in the mix this weekend with a comeback fight. And then on Sunday, you've got a pretty good top-tier card headlined by Tom Welland and a bit of a step up. So a lot of really interesting fights this weekend. Should be a good weekend before we head into a massive, massive week next week. Not just UFC Noche, not just Crocker Donovan 2, not just BKFC, not just a Ring Magazine Fight Week card, not just Naoya Inoue against MJ Akhmadaliev, but Canelo Alvarez, Terrence Crawford is just under 2 weeks away. I can't believe it. I can't wait. It's going to be an absolute mega event spectacle and the biggest fight of the decade probably. So, yeah, strap in because we're getting really close to that one. And I think Terrence Crawford's going to do it. I'm picking Bud. Right now I am. It may change it, but I'm liking Bud. So that's all I've got. Thank y'all for listening. Have a good week, and see you next time. Peace out.